Picture yourself walking through the corridors of a 12th century castle. The stone walls are cold beneath your fingertips, and the air carries the scent of burning rushes and distant cooking fires. In this world, childhood as we understand it today simply does not exist. At 12 years old, you are not a child playing with toys. You are a political asset, a living treaty waiting to be signed. Medieval Europe operates on principles foreign to our modern understanding. Marriage is not about love or personal choice. It is the fundamental currency of diplomacy. When noble families arrange unions, they are not planning weddings. They are forging alliances that will determine the fate of kingdoms. The Church teaches that marriage is a sacrament, yet canon law pragmatically acknowledges that political necessity often trumps personal consent. In England during this period, the concept of childhood extends only to around 7 years of age. After that, young nobles begin their education in statecraft, learning Latin, managing household accounts, and understanding the intricate web of feudal obligations that govern their world. Girls of noble birth receive instruction in languages, religious texts, and the complex protocols of court life. They learn early that their bodies and their bloodlines belong not to themselves, but to the greater political machinery of medieval Europe. The legal framework surrounding marriage reflects this reality. Canon law technically requires consent from both parties, but in practice, this consent is often assumed or coerced through family pressure and political necessity. The minimum age for marriage varies by region and circumstance, but royal marriages frequently occur well before what we would consider appropriate ages. These unions serve as binding contracts between kingdoms, securing trade routes, preventing wars, and consolidating territorial claims. Consider the economic dimensions of these arrangements. A royal marriage brings not just political alliance, but substantial financial benefits. Dowries include vast land holdings, trade privileges, and monetary payments that can fund military campaigns or infrastructure projects. The bride's family gains access to new markets and diplomatic protections, while the groom's family secures strategic advantages that may last for generations. Medieval chroniclers write matter-of-factly about these arrangements, reflecting a worldview where individual desires are subordinate to dynastic obligations. Contemporary accounts rarely express moral concern about young marriages, instead focusing on the political wisdom or folly of particular alliances. This historical evidence helps us understand that we cannot judge medieval practices by modern standards, even as we acknowledge the profound human cost of these systems. The royal household itself functions as a complex political institution. Young brides enter not just marriages, but entire political ecosystems filled with advisors, courtiers, and competing factions. They must navigate these relationships while learning to exercise whatever limited agency their positions allow. Some develop remarkable political acumen, becoming influential figures in their own right. Others struggle beneath the weight of responsibilities they never chose. This systematic approach to marriage creates a paradox we must grapple with throughout our exploration. These were real human beings with feelings, fears, and dreams, yet they lived within social structures that subordinated individual welfare to political necessity. Understanding this tension between human experience and systemic constraint becomes essential to comprehending not just medieval history, but the complex relationship between power and personal agency that continues to shape our world today. To understand the human dimension of medieval political marriage, we must examine one particular story that illuminates the broader patterns of this historical period. Through careful analysis of historical records, we can reconstruct the experience of a young person whose life was fundamentally shaped by the intersection of personal identity and political necessity. Historical chronicles and administrative records provide glimpses into the daily reality of royal childhood during this era. Imagine waking each morning in chambers adorned with tapestries depicting biblical scenes and family heraldry. Your day begins with prayers led by household chaplains, followed by lessons in Latin texts and religious instruction. The education you receive is far more comprehensive than that available to most people in medieval Europe, yet it comes with the constant awareness that every skill you develop serves a larger political purpose. Contemporary accounts describe the careful preparation that noble children received for their eventual political roles. Young women learned not just domestic skills, but the complex art of court diplomacy. They studied multiple languages, enabling them to communicate with foreign dignitaries and navigate international correspondence. They memorized genealogies stretching back generations, understanding how bloodlines connected distant kingdoms and created claims to various thrones. The process of negotiating royal marriages often began years before the actual ceremony. Diplomatic correspondence reveals the intricate calculations involved in these arrangements. Ambassadors travelled between courts, discussing not just dowries and territorial agreements, but also more personal considerations. The health and temperament of potential spouses, their education and religious devotion, their ability to fulfill the political obligations that marriage would bring. For the individuals at the center of these negotiations, the experience must have been profoundly isolating. Historical sources suggest that some young nobles developed close relationships with tutors, religious advisors, or other household members who provided emotional support during this process. Letters and diary entries from later periods reveal how some individuals found ways to express personal preferences within the constraints of political necessity, sometimes developing genuine affection for spouses chosen for them, other times maintaining cordial but distant relationships focused on fulfilling dynastic obligations. The wedding ceremony itself represented a complex blend of religious ritual and political theatre. Contemporary accounts describe elaborate celebrations lasting multiple days, with guests representing various noble houses and foreign kingdoms. These events served not just to formalize the marriage, but to publicly demonstrate the new political alliances being created. The bride and groom were central figures in this drama, yet often had little control over the proceedings. Medieval chroniclers occasionally provide insights into the emotional dimensions of these experiences. Some accounts describe young brides who adapted successfully to their new circumstances, developing political influence and finding meaning in their roles as queens or duchesses. Others hint at the struggles faced by individuals who found themselves isolated in foreign courts, separated from family and familiar cultural patterns. The establishment of new households required complex negotiations about living arrangements, household staff, and the integration of different cultural traditions. Royal marriages often brought together individuals from different regions with distinct customs, languages, and religious practices. The process of building functional relationships within these multicultural environments required considerable diplomatic skill and emotional resilience. Historical records also reveal the broader network of relationships that supported royal marriages. Extended family members, court advisors, and religious figures all played roles in helping young couples navigate their new responsibilities. Some individuals developed mentoring relationships with older nobles who had successfully managed similar political marriages. Others found support through religious communities or literary pursuits that provided intellectual stimulation and emotional outlets. Understanding these individual experiences within their proper historical context helps us appreciate both the remarkable resilience of people living within constrained circumstances and the profound human cost of political systems that subordinate personal welfare to dynastic obligations. These were not abstract political arrangements, but lived experiences that shaped real human beings who found ways to create meaning and exercise agency within the limitations of their historical moment. Behind every royal marriage lay a complex web of political calculations that extended far beyond the two individuals being wed. To understand the human impact of these arrangements, we must first comprehend the sophisticated diplomatic machinery that drove medieval European politics. The 12th and 13th centuries witnessed unprecedented political complexity across Western Europe. The rise of centralized monarchies created new opportunities for diplomatic alliance, while simultaneously increasing the stakes of international relationships. Royal marriages became essential tools for managing these evolving power dynamics, serving as binding contracts that could prevent devastating wars or secure crucial military support during times of crisis. Consider the intricate negotiations surrounding any major royal marriage of this period. Teams of diplomatic advisors spent months or even years working out the details of proposed alliances. They calculated not just immediate political benefits, but long-term implications that might affect future generations. Marriage contracts included detailed provisions about territorial rights, trade agreements, military obligations, and succession laws that would govern the inheritance of titles and lands. The economic dimensions of these arrangements were staggering by medieval standards. Royal dowries often included vast estates, monetary payments equivalent to several years of royal revenue, and exclusive trading privileges that could transform the economic fortunes of entire regions. The bride's family gained access to new markets and diplomatic protections, while the groom's family secured strategic advantages that justified the substantial costs involved in negotiating and maintaining these alliances. Religious considerations added another layer of complexity to these political calculations. The Catholic Church wielded enormous influence over marriage law, requiring ecclesiastical approval for royal unions and maintaining the authority to annul marriages that violated canon law. Pope and bishops often found themselves mediating between competing political interests, balancing their spiritual authority against the practical necessities of European diplomacy. Medieval chroniclers provide detailed accounts of the elaborate diplomatic protocols surrounding royal marriage negotiations. Ambassadors travelled with large retinues, carrying not just official correspondence, but also symbolic gifts intended to demonstrate the wealth and cultural sophistication of their respective kingdoms. These diplomatic exchanges often lasted for months, with multiple rounds of negotiation required to resolve complex questions about territorial boundaries, military obligations, and succession rights. The broader European political landscape during this period created particular pressures that made strategic marriages increasingly important. The ongoing struggle between secular monarchs and papal authority required careful diplomatic balancing, as royal families sought to maintain good relationships with both temporal and spiritual powers. The rise of new military technologies and evolving warfare tactics meant that traditional alliance patterns might suddenly become obsolete, forcing rulers to constantly reassess their diplomatic strategies. Court advisors played crucial roles in evaluating potential marriage alliances, analyzing not just immediate political benefits but also longer-term implications for dynastic stability. These individuals often possessed extensive knowledge of European genealogies, enabling them to identify potential succession crises or territorial disputes that might emerge from particular marriage arrangements. Their counsel could determine whether proposed alliances would strengthen or weaken their ruler's position within the complex hierarchy of medieval European politics. The impact of these political calculations extended far beyond the royal courts themselves. Noble families throughout Europe found their own fortunes tied to the success or failure of royal marriages, as these alliances could dramatically alter the distribution of political power and economic opportunity. Merchants, military commanders, and religious leaders all had stakes in the outcomes of diplomatic negotiations that might seem to concern only royal families. International trade patterns were fundamentally shaped by royal marriage alliances, as these agreements often included provisions for exclusive trading privileges or preferential access to particular markets. The economic prosperity of entire regions could depend on maintaining good relationships with allied kingdoms, making the success of royal marriages a matter of concern for thousands of people whose livelihoods depended on stable diplomatic relationships. Understanding this broader political context helps illuminate why individual preferences and personal welfare were so often subordinated to larger strategic considerations. Royal marriages were not private affairs, but public institutions that affected the lives and fortunes of countless people throughout medieval Europe. The individuals at the center of these arrangements found themselves bearing enormous responsibilities for maintaining diplomatic relationships that could determine the fate of kingdoms. This systematic approach to marriage as statecraft created profound tensions between human desires and political necessity. Yet within these constraints, some individuals found ways to exercise meaningful agency, developing political influence that allowed them to shape the very systems that had initially constrained their choices. Their stories reveal both the limitations and possibilities inherent in medieval political culture. Within the rigid structures of medieval political marriage, individual human beings found remarkable ways to create meaning, exercise agency, and build fulfilling lives despite circumstances they never chose. Their stories illuminate the complex relationship between personal resilience and systemic constraint that characterizes so much of human history. Historical records reveal numerous examples of royal women who transformed their initially constrained circumstances into positions of genuine political influence. Through careful cultivation of relationships with court advisors, religious leaders, and foreign diplomats, some individuals developed extensive networks that allowed them to shape policy decisions and diplomatic initiatives. Their success required exceptional intelligence, emotional resilience, and sophisticated understanding of medieval political culture. Consider the daily reality of adapting to life in a foreign court after a political marriage. Contemporary accounts describe the challenges faced by young brides who found themselves in unfamiliar cultural environments, often speaking different languages and following different religious or social customs. Some individuals thrived in these multicultural settings, becoming bridges between different traditions and helping to facilitate diplomatic relationships that extended far beyond their original marriage alliances. Medieval chroniclers occasionally provide glimpses into the personal relationships that developed within royal households. Some royal couples, despite their arranged marriages, developed genuine affection and mutual respect that enabled them to build successful partnerships both personally and politically. Others maintained cordial but distant relationships focused primarily on fulfilling their dynastic obligations, finding personal satisfaction through other relationships and activities. The education and intellectual development available to royal women during this period, while limited by medieval standards, often exceeded what was accessible to most people in their society. Many individuals used these educational opportunities to develop expertise in areas that interested them personally: religious scholarship, literary pursuits, artistic patronage, or administrative management. These intellectual outlets provided not just personal fulfillment, but also practical skills that enhanced their political effectiveness. Religious faith offered another avenue for finding meaning within constrained circumstances. Many royal women developed deep spiritual lives that provided emotional sustenance and moral framework for navigating complex political situations. Some became notable patrons of religious institutions, using their positions to support monastic communities, fund charitable activities, or promote religious reforms that reflected their personal values. The development of household management skills often provided opportunities for exercising meaningful authority and creative expression. Royal women typically oversaw large, complex households that required sophisticated organizational abilities and diplomatic finesse. Managing relationships between different cultural groups within their courts, overseeing educational programs for noble children, and coordinating elaborate ceremonial events all demanded considerable intelligence and leadership capability. Correspondence from later medieval periods reveals how some individuals maintained connections with family members and friends from their original homes while simultaneously building new relationships in their adopted courts. These networks provided emotional support and practical assistance that helped them navigate the challenges of their positions. Letter writing became not just a practical necessity, but also a form of intellectual and emotional expression. Some royal women found ways to influence political decisions through informal channels, developing close relationships with advisors or family members who could advocate for their perspectives in formal political settings. Their success in these endeavors often depended on their ability to understand and work within existing power structures while gradually expanding the scope of their influence. The patronage of arts and learning provided another avenue for meaningful engagement with medieval culture. Many royal women became notable supporters of literature, music, architecture, and scholarship, using their resources to create lasting cultural contributions that reflected their personal interests and values. These activities often provided opportunities for intellectual stimulation and creative expression that transcended the immediate political purposes of their marriages. Historical evidence suggests that some individuals found particular satisfaction in mentoring younger family members or court associates, sharing their hard-won knowledge about navigating complex political environments. These relationships often provided mutual benefits, giving experienced individuals opportunities to influence the next generation while providing younger people with guidance and support. The stories of individual resilience within medieval political marriage illuminate broader themes about human adaptation and agency that extend far beyond this particular historical period. They demonstrate how people can find ways to create meaningful lives within constrained circumstances, developing skills, relationships, and contributions that transcend the limitations of their immediate situations. Understanding these individual experiences helps us appreciate both the remarkable human capacity for adaptation and the ongoing importance of creating social systems that allow people greater freedom to shape their own destinies. The resilience displayed by individuals within medieval political culture provides inspiration while also highlighting the value of continuing to work toward more just and equitable social arrangements. The exploration of medieval political marriage offers profound insights that extend far beyond historical curiosity, illuminating enduring questions about power, agency, and human resilience that remain relevant to our contemporary world. Modern scholarship has fundamentally transformed our understanding of medieval marriage practices through interdisciplinary approaches that combine traditional historical analysis with insights from anthropology, gender studies, and social psychology. Contemporary historians emphasize the importance of understanding medieval institutions within their proper cultural context, while simultaneously acknowledging the genuine human costs of systems that subordinated individual welfare to political necessity. The evolution of historical scholarship itself reflects broader changes in how we approach questions of power and agency. Earlier generations of historians often focus primarily on political and military events, treating individual experiences as secondary to larger institutional developments. Contemporary approaches center human experience while maintaining scholarly rigor, recognizing that understanding the lived experiences of historical individuals provides essential insights into how social systems actually functioned. This methodological shift has particular relevance for understanding medieval women's experiences. Rather than viewing royal women simply as passive victims of patriarchal systems, contemporary scholarship examines the complex ways individuals navigated constrained circumstances, often developing remarkable political influence and finding meaningful ways to exercise agency within existing power structures. These stories provide models for understanding human resilience while simultaneously highlighting the importance of creating more equitable social arrangements. The comparative study of medieval political marriage also illuminates the historical contingency of our contemporary assumptions about childhood, marriage, and individual autonomy. Understanding how different societies have organized these fundamental human experiences helps us recognize that our current arrangements, while preferable in many ways, are not inevitable or universal. This historical perspective can inform contemporary discussions about human rights, particularly regarding issues of consent, childhood protection, and individual autonomy. Perhaps most importantly, the study of medieval political marriage demonstrates the enduring tension between individual desires and social pressures that characterizes human experience across historical periods. While the specific manifestations of this tension have changed dramatically, the fundamental challenge of balancing personal fulfillment with social obligations remains relevant to contemporary discussions about career choices, family responsibilities, and civic engagement. The remarkable resilience displayed by individuals within medieval political culture provides inspiration for understanding how people can create meaningful lives within constrained circumstances. Their stories remind us that human agency persists even within systems that severely limit individual choice, and that people consistently find ways to exercise creativity, build relationships, and contribute to their communities regardless of the obstacles they face. Contemporary discussions about power, consent, and individual rights benefit from historical perspective that acknowledges both the progress we have made in creating more equitable social arrangements and the ongoing work required to ensure that all individuals have opportunities to shape their own destinies. The medieval past serves not as a model to emulate, but as a reminder of the human cost of systems that fail to protect individual dignity and agency. Understanding these historical experiences with empathy and scholarly rigor helps us appreciate both the remarkable capacity for human adaptation and the ongoing importance of working towards social arrangements that honor human dignity while meeting collective needs.